Mercedes seems to have set sail for the 2024 season faster than anybody would have expected, and they have some wonder work going on back in Brackley. However, it seems like nobody is prepared for what is coming next on the W15, as Wolff provided even more information about the external look of the car, which seemed to be the most troublesome issue with the previous two generations of engineering products. But with Hamilton's stark admission, is there any possibility that the new leaks will tingle a fear in Red Bull, Ferrari and McLaren, or is Mercedes just way too back to fight for race wins in 2024? It's safe to say that the next 3 months are going to be one of the hardest, if not the hardest ones that Mercedes will endure ever since its existence. With 8 podium finishes in 2023, it was the worst season after having only 3 in 2012. But even one of those was a win, the Chinese GP for Rosberg. That's why the Brackley-based squad would have to work on a total revamp of the car, something that has been spoken about quite often in the previous period and something that is prone to receiving more attention from the media due to its popularity. While we do know that the W15 is changing its entire direction, we did not know which parts the team were specifically talking about. We'll get to that later in the video. But first, I want to talk about Hamilton's expectations from the W15, as it seems like he's stood true to his word. He visited Brackley in order to see whether his feedback is being implemented and whether the car is making progress in the right direction. This is, of course, the 7-time world champion we're talking about, and if he has something to say, the team should listen and implement, which is what they did not do back in 2022 and 2023 when he warned them multiple times about the zero-pod design of the car. That, though, is all history now, and from what we can hear from Hamilton, the car is going to be a different animal on the tarmac in 2024, and that's exactly what the fans would love to hear. Elaborating on this matter even further, Hamilton went on to say, "I'm not an engineer or a designer, so it's not easy. It's always an exciting time of the year because I've seen the current car, W15, in the wind tunnel. I always go by the wind tunnel when I go to the factory to see it evolving in whichever direction it ends up going. I popped in just to see where we were, and when I come back, it will be again a different animal. But I have full faith in everyone that's working on it, and I'm hopeful that we will be in a much more competitive position next year." It's commonly known, of course, that the aero department of Mercedes has been lacking severely, and while I'm not trying to throw any shade at them for coming up with the zero-pod effect, quite the contrary, this deserves praise for going a way nobody else did. The team not abandoning it from the first time it saw its flaws was something that clearly aggravated Hamilton. To top that off, teams like McLaren and Aston Martin were able to make some huge improvements on their cars in the winter period and during the season as well, which is something that Mercedes is looking forward to building on when the new season comes. These two teams definitely showed that there is more performance to be unlocked from the car, which is why the W15 needs to be worked on profoundly from the very first to the very last detail of it. Earlier this season, Wolff said that the car would look different and it would have nothing in common with the W14. But what was he precisely talking about? In the latest interview, the Austrian team principal opened up on the W15 yet again, as it seems like even he is feeling the pressure on his shoulders to deliver a car that could actually fight for wins in 2024, and 2 disastrous seasons under its belt. Elaborating on this matter and feeding the media with some more information about the W15, Wolff went on to say, "Aston Martin said that between the autumn car of 2022 and the start of 2023, they found 2.5 seconds. They were pretty much last, and they were the second quickest team at the beginning of the season. McLaren expected an upgrade of 0.2, and they got a second. Next year's car is going to be more conventional in what you would expect from a Formula One car, but there are a few interesting details that we have not seen on other cars yet. Every year that is not easy is part of a learning curve that makes you better afterwards. I wish we would have competed for the World Championship, but that wasn't the case. So we are looking forward to next year. All sails are set for 2024. We take the learnings and there is more analysis that we are doing, but it's about the new car, it's about the organisation. Furthermore, Wolff went on to emphasise the importance of the aero department in this particular instance, which is the bleeding point of Mercedes' performance, as the Austrian said that with the ground effect, the cars have become so fragile from an aerodynamic point of view, and you need to have the tyres working in their optimal window. This is why Mercedes will visibly change some of the parts that you can see on the car compared to the previous season, and it's just like the trackside engineer Andrew Chauvelin promised earlier this season. The team is leaving no stone unturned in searching for more performance. It's what the fans and the sport have been waiting for quite some time, considering the fact that Wolff promised a 2.5-second performance boost compared to where the car was in the previous 2 years. But if they manage to get this done, then it will definitely be one of the most successful projects that the Brackley-based team has accomplished. Of course, the challenge is massive, and the technical director of the team, James Allison, went on to speak about how big the consequences of having 2 very bad seasons for the team are. But furthermore, he also spoke about the odds being massively stacked against Mercedes in terms of building a car that would be competitive in the span of 3 months. Elaborating on this, Allison said, "If you look at the long march of F1 history, then the stats are against us. Teams do not bounce back from slipping from their previous peak in the length of time we have set ourselves, but we have nevertheless set a pretty ambitious program. We have quite a lot of strength in depth here, and we've made quite a lot of progress with next year's car. Whether it proves sufficient enough, only time will tell, but that's what I'm hoping for us, and I know that all my colleagues and teammates around me will be hoping for the same." The common belief is that Mercedes should be able to follow the path that Red Bull paved for all the other teams out there on the grid, but it's much more complicated than that, as Hamilton pinpointed to one certain area that makes this impossible to implement: the slump of performance from Aston Martin. The UK-based team had its hopes significantly boosted up in the beginning of the season, but when they tried to implement the Red Bull-like philosophy on the car that runs with pretty much all Mercedes mechanical parts, the slump happened. Aston Martin tried to go back to its original version of the car, but it only created more problems for them. And when talking about this, Hamilton said, "Look at the Astons. They tried to copy a car and it wasn't the same. It's not as easy as that. You have to try and take the good parts and through trial and error, just try to add other parts." But you can imagine they are also nervous of making too big of a change and it being the wrong one. We need to be consistently week on week adding performance, and we have higher targets than ever before because we have a massive gap to catch. That makes it really tricky. With this in mind, the challenge for Mercedes is going to be massive, and it does seem like the team will have a lot of hurdles to tackle for the W15. But the team has finally set its sights on a destination that might see them win more races in 2024, and who knows, maybe even compete for the championship. What is your take on this entire situation? Let us know in the comments below.